So I ain't gonna lie, I got no regrets about anything I've done. But with everything that I know now, are there some things that I could do differently? Well, hear me out. Okay, so I've been recently watching Pokemon. I know, the classic, the legendary or whatnot. I started in the beginning, and there's something about Pokemon that always bothered me, and I really had to think about it and understand something about Pokemon that really just, well, I guess for the longest time, I couldn't really see it until I started to reflect on my own life and understand really what happened. Because everybody knows what happened at the end of the first Pokemon League, right? You know, in the Kanto region where Ash had his squad, he had Charizard, Pikachu, you know, he had a pretty crazy lineup. But myself and a lot of people for the longest time always looked at Charizard as the reason why Ash didn't get to ultimately get his goal at the end of the Pokemon League. And mind you, there's a lot of variables that went into what happened at the end of that league. For example, there was a lot of things rigged against Ash, whether people want to admit it or not, because going into that final battle he had, ultimately, I mean, his squad was completely exhausted. There was just so much that they went through before they got there that it really wasn't even fair, on top of the fact that, you know, they could have actually waited a little bit longer, which we'll talk about patience in a little bit. But ultimately, Ash had so much going against him in that league, which is what ultimately led to what happened. But one of the biggest things that people always say about that particular portion of the story is the fact that people like to blame Charizard in that event. A lot of people like to say, yo, it was because Charizard didn't listen, which ultimately was the final, you know, I guess reason why Ash wasn't able to come out of that one victorious. And of course, there's some people that like to throw in the variable that Ash wasn't as experienced as he needed to be, and that's why Charizard didn't listen. And honestly, putting everything on Charizard just really feels a bit unfair. Because yeah, Charizard definitely didn't listen, but one of the major aspects of why Charizard didn't listen was not really all to do with what happened with Ash as far as his experience, and was more so to do with how it all began. Because if you go back to the beginning of things with Ash and Charizard, the way that they connected, the way that Ash got Charizard, or Charmander at the time, wasn't conventional. Charmander was originally somebody else's Pokemon and was very loyal to that person, that trainer, for the longest time. And it wasn't until Charmander seen like, oh, this trainer doesn't give a crap about me, and then ultimately that's how that connection happened with him and Ash. But originally, and honestly, the foundation of that whole thing was Charmander wasn't really Ash's to begin with. And you know, at the end of the day, when it comes to Pokemon, you can't catch other people's Pokemon. And you're probably like, well, what does that have to do with you? What do you mean? Well, I go back a lifetime ago to where I was a very different person. And I guess a little bit of story time right here. Because once upon a time, I was dating this person. And again, as I started this video saying, do I regret anything? No. But knowing everything that I know now, the thing that I definitely would change is the fact that if I could put what I know now, essentially this brain, into old me's body, then I can only imagine what some of the outcomes would have been. Because when I first got with this person, one of the major things that was essentially the catalyst to our relationship started off as follows. When I first met the girl, I was kind of talking to somebody else, and she was also with somebody else. Me back then, I was just more so on some like, yo dog, she's gonna be mine, I'm taking her. But then I met this new person, and I was kind of like, wow, you know, this person is just amazing, I want to be with this person. But again, this person already had somebody else as well, but they also were saying the similar thing of like, yo, this person ain't treating me right, this person isn't, you know, fulfilling the needs that this person had. And ultimately was like, I guess, the beginning of our bond. So inevitably, after a very short amount of time, ultimately I left that person. I ain't gonna lie, back then, again, I was a little bit of a beast, because I got rid of shorty at like, let's just say 8 or 9 o'clock, and by 10 o'clock I had the next one coming through the door. Obviously, I've grown since then. That ain't me anymore, but I'm just, you know, giving you guys the story of what happened. And when I got with this person, it was a very quick amount of time before things really took off. Literally by like the second or third time that I had her in bed, I was like, yo, why don't you move in with me? Mind you, this person was still somewhat involved with this other person, even though they were saying like, yo, this person is really mistreating me, like I can't do this anymore. And again, me being the beast that I was back then, ultimately I was like, say less. And I did anything and everything to make sure that I took her out of that home. I mean, eventually I went with some of my peoples, and we went straight to the dude's crib where he had all her stuff. And I was like, yo, my people's is going in there and getting her stuff. And I was really just ruthless about it. Homie was there in tears, and I didn't really care. I just ultimately was like, no, I want her and she's mine, and that's it, sorry. And that was the beginning of the relationship that I had with this new person. But the thing about it is that this new person also had a lot of the similar traits of the previous person, in terms of, well, it definitely seemed like this person still was missing somebody else and ultimately really just didn't have the level of respect for me that anybody would want in a relationship. Like when you're with somebody, you want that person to, you know, build with you, grow with you. A union that is just, you know, unbreakable, respect, faith, loyalty, all of that stuff all in one. But honestly, I could say that there was a lot of bad times, but there was also a lot of good times with that person. Like, yeah, it was a lifetime ago, but that was some of my most craziest and most favorite moments of my life. But again, thinking back, if I could take this brain that I have right now and put it back into the past and give this person this knowledge, I would have told myself like, yo, dog, if she want to be with you, she will leave homie on her own, and you will have the time between the separation, and then eventually, opposed to Ash taking Charmander straight off of homie's arms, it would actually be a natural and essentially true and genuine relationship that could build into something a lot more than just, well, me taking somebody's girl and eventually things not working out. Because I'm sure you've heard the saying, you know, how you get them is how you lose them. And while I didn't necessarily lose this person like that, ultimately, I'm the type of person, and I've always been this way, is when I'm with somebody, and especially if I have feelings, strong feelings for them, I want to be with them for the rest of my life. So I never wanted to lose this person to begin with, but because of the beginnings of our relationship, it was essentially destined to go a certain way. And while I have absolutely no regrets about the past and how things went, because maybe I don't get to this point if I don't learn some of those lessons, ultimately giving that knowledge to myself, going back to what I said earlier, patience. And so that first Pokemon League didn't go the way that it went because Ash wasn't experienced or because Charizard wouldn't listen. The nature of their bond and how it started off, wait for good things to come. But I ain't gonna lie, back then I was a little bit of a beast in these streets. I didn't care. Homie was Brian. I took homie girl. I was just like, yo, she's mine now. That's all I have for this one. I'm Tim. As always, people, have an awesome day. Peace in.